here this morning just thankful for your love for us. We are your children, Lord. We thank you for loving us unconditionally. You are just so great, Lord. It's so hard to put into words just how thankful we are for your love and your gift of mercy. Lord, I ask this morning that you just open everybody's hearts this morning to understand and accept that gift that you gave us on that cross years ago. You give life, you are love, you bring light to the darkness, you give hope, you restore every heart that is broken. Great are you, Lord. It's your breath
Good morning, Pleasantville. It's good to see you this morning. It's great to have you online. We almost didn't. We have an amazing tech team. We had no streaming, nothing, and about 3 minutes before you started singing, they got it. So we thank God for that and for them. A couple announcements. Coming up, again, I want to remind everybody for December 24th, we're going to have one service. It'll be 9:30, but it'll be an hour and a half service. One service for Christmas or Christmas Eve. We'll combine everything. And the Kids Zone on the 17th is going to set up a picture area. So if you would like to get a family picture on the 17th, and we're going to try to talk them into doing it on the 24th too. But bring your phone. They're going to also have somebody take pictures, but they'll do it on your phone, and thought it really be neat and a nice idea. Plus, there's going to be a special thing from Kids Zone on the 24th, so we're looking forward to that. Also, in your bulletin, there's a thing about Hearts for Hunger, and I think it's something that challenges us. If you ever wonder what it's like to touch an entire family, to have an effect on them, those of you, we had 30-some who served on Thursday at the Thanksgiving meal that Hearts for Hunger put on for the community. And I think that they said it was 138 people here. And it was an amazing opportunity to just step into people's lives who, I remember talking to a man, and he said, the food's really good. But he said, what I really like the most is that you sat here and talked to me, because I haven't eaten a meal in the last year since my wife died with anybody else. And it's to me almost unbelievable, okay? It is. But when we're helping, our donations that the church gives and that you can help to support is actually touching the lives of people. And it's amazing what they do, what Step by Step does, and you all get a chance in your offerings and your giving and things like that, and to have that impact. And keep it up, appreciate it, but I want you to know you're having an impact, and it means the world to some people. Now I want to welcome everybody as we go into our second part of a series that we started, and we started this last week. And we've all lived, most everybody in here, even if you're pretty young, you have already lived your life and made some decisions. You've made some decisions you look back on and say, I'm glad I did that, right? We probably said, you know what, I'm really glad. I wasn't sure, but I'm glad I did that. And there's probably some decisions that we made that said, I wish I hadn't. I wish I didn't do that. I wish that didn't happen the way it turned out. I should have seen that coming, right? You with me? All of us are in that boat. I don't think there's anybody who's exempt from that. And what we're doing in this series is I'm going to offer you unoriginal, it's not my own original stuff, but unoriginal advice. You'll be glad you did advice. It's just advice. It's not moral, it's not ethical. Advice is somewhere in the middle. It's not a law, it's not illegal, it's in the middle. It's classified much more as wisdom. Because one of the things we talk about, and you're going to hear it a lot over this, is that all of life is connected. In other words, what we do, what we decide, what choices we make today will impact our tomorrows. And we know that. We've seen it. It's in our own lives. Time after time after time, we realize it's connected. In other words, what we do today just doesn't stay in today. We live with consequences. We live with joy at the right choices, right? Because we did this, this happens. But it's all connected. And it's not just connected for our lives. The choices I make affect people who love me, who are close to me, who may live with me, and you. They affect them. Those choices affect them. So if we begin to realize that the choices we make really, really matter, we begin to see we need a lot of wisdom. We need a lot of good wisdom. Our working definition of wisdom simply insights formed by the knowledge that life is connected. That's what wisdom really is. It's realizing that the choice I make here, that fun for one night, right? We think one night, that won't hurt. We'll live with that the next day, and the next day, and the next day, and on. They're connected. The knowledge that life is connected, your life and my life, we're talking about that one thing leads to another, and those decisions, as I said, they impact other people. Wisdom has us just stop sometimes, just like, hold on, let's take a look at this. Let's take some time to examine, what are my options of wisdom in a decision? When I make a choice, when I want to, maybe something's a little questionable. What are my options here? What could possibly happen? Those things are smart to do. I think it's something that, as parents, we try to impart to our children to make wise choices, good decisions. And the fact of the matter is, if our children don't make wise decisions, sometimes we as parents and grandparents are impacted severely by their decisions. But today, or you'll be glad you did, timeless, unoriginal advice, our words, our bit of wisdom is just one word. Listen. Listen. And I think that's funny, considering that you're all sitting in a row looking at me, listening. At least some of you are. Do you ever notice when somebody talks about listening and you think about it, that no one ever has to tell you to listen to what you want to hear? You realize that? You realize how quickly our ears perk up when it's something we want to hear? We're already in tune with it. We're already there. And it just what? Reinforces us. Reinforces us. And I think Christians, we need to be careful, because sometimes we're praying about something, and then it's, we really want something really bad, and we're praying about it, and we're so positive about something, and then this person mentions it, or you heard this on the radio or whatever, and you say, oh, God's confirming it. But the problem is we're only listening at that point to what we want to hear, to what will feed what we want to hear. And I think we have to be careful. It's easy when you want to hear, hey, you want dessert, just get it. Just get it. It doesn't take much to convince us of that, does it? It doesn't take much. Somebody's, buy the shoes. They look good on you. You already wanted those shoes. That's all I needed to hear. It's that kind of thing. You need to call that guy back. I think he's interested in you. Move in. Blame her. Blame him. Don't call. Just text. Don't apologize. It wasn't your fault. Nobody who already thinks those things has trouble listening to your advice on that, if it agrees with how they think. The reality of it is, our biases are strong in us. Our biases, our leanings, they're strong in us. But wisdom would say, wait a minute. You need to uncross your arms. You know what that means? I never knew that. One of our ministers, remember Shane Keeney when he was here, and he said to me one time, he said, every time you sit and listen, you cross your arms. It looks like you're mad. I'm not mad, it's just comfortable. He said, you got to uncross your arms. What do I do with them? But because we have body language, we have to stop, uncross our arms, which I think is more like let your guard down, let your biases just rest over here in the corner, and agree to listen to something you don't want to hear. Right? Isn't that what we need to do? Isn't that the truth? You see, as long as somebody's going to say what I want them to say, we're good. But if you're going to say, and like, I don't want to listen to them, they're always negative against my ideas. They always shoot my balloons down. But wisdom says, pause. Listen. Uncross your arms. Let your guard come down. And listen to what you don't want to hear. And that's what we're talking about this morning. That's a challenge. To do that, we need a lot of maturity. And maturity is not just old age. Because I know a lot of old people. They never got over the mule stage. You know what I mean? They're just stubborn all the way through. But mature is a spiritual thing. And it's that time I'm willing to listen, even though I don't want to hear it. I really don't. I'm so excited about going into this business. And so many things are lining up. And you're going to tell me the risk. You're going to lay out the things. It's negative. But maturity says we should listen. And we really need to embrace that, because when we are willing to listen to someone who we know is going to tell us something I don't want to hear. For some younger people, it's your parents sometimes. You don't want to hear it from your parents. I know that. It's hard to realize that they love you more probably than anybody else in this world but Jesus Christ. And they're concerned about you. And they're trying to protect you. And when we take the time to listen, you know what it does? It puts you ahead of the pack. It's actually such a mature and spiritual thing to do. It moves you ahead of everybody else. It keeps you out of trouble. It ensures that when you write your story of your life, and you listen and you take to heart what somebody's telling you, and you weigh that in, all your biases, you may have quite a different story to tell your grandchildren and your great-grandchildren. And the story of your life will be remarkably different because you listened to what somebody had to say when you didn't really want to hear it. And I'm going to tell you, it's not natural. It's not natural. We want to hear what we want to hear. I want you to confirm my bias, confirm my opinion. And the reality of it is, I don't think most of you are different than I am, is there's still that little boy that doesn't like to be told what to do. That inside of us sometimes is the one that stomps our feet and looks at you and says, no, I'm not doing it. And that's in a lot of us. It still is. And we can deny it and whatever, and we see it in our children, and it's like, I'm exhausted from this. How exhausted is God from us? I'm glad He's not. I'm glad He's not. But we're not much different. We have an idea. I don't know if I really want to hear somebody go against that idea. It makes me feel like the idea wasn't so great. Makes me feel like I'm maybe a little stupid. We have a tendency to gravitate to advice that makes me feel all warm and fuzzy. We like to hear somebody tell me how smart we are. Again, it confirms our bias. So if you're going to tell me what I want to hear, I'll listen. But so often we close off what we need to hear. Refusing to listen to what we don't want to hear, that we need to hear, is really a gateway decision. It's a gateway decision. What do I mean by that? Well, if you look back at some of the worst things, some things in your life that you regret, and we talked about last week, there'll be areas of regret in our life, and if we're honest and we look back on them, we'll see a series of unwise decisions that we made. A series before we get to that point of regret. And a gateway decision is at the beginning of the series of unwise decisions. It's like, okay, we're looking, do we want to go wisdom, do we want to listen, or do we only want to do this? And we open the gate and we enter unwisdom, unwise. And we fall into a series because we've already opened the gate. When I don't want to listen, when I don't want to hear your advice, it's a gateway decision. And that opening of the gate can lead to regrets in your life we can't undo. We can't change. But they will be there. They will be there. And you know what? We already know this. Most of us know this. Because you know how we know it? All of us, I'm convinced of this, you have been on the other side of giving somebody advice, of talking to somebody you saw. You and I know this, that you are making a terrible decision. This young man you see, he doesn't treat his family well. We see things in him you can't see because you're all biased. You got stars in your eyes. You know what I mean? But here it is, and you're hearing people say, and you can see it clearly. We see it clearly. You shouldn't be around her. She's not good for you. How many times have we said that? And it's like, here's why. And they don't see it. We can see it clearly. We have been on the other side. We're trying to speak into your life to help you see what you can't see. Because we all have blinders to our biases. We all have blinders when emotions come in and it fills our heart and hormones get crazy and we can't see it, and somebody needs to speak into our lives, and we've all done it. But when we're on that side, on the other side, how quickly we reject that. How quickly we don't want to hear that. All right? It's with us all. We all have done that. I can watch. I've talked to people. I've seen what excessive drinking does. I've seen what drug abuse does. I've seen these things happen. You have too. I've seen financial careers ruined over silly moves that we just get caught up in. And we see it. We're not surprised by the outcome. We knew it was going to happen. It's not negativity. It's saying, here's a reality. Isn't it true that looking from the outside in, it's clear? When you aren't connected, when you don't have an emotional connection except that you love and care for that person, it seems so clear to us. And that's the point of the message. That's why we're talking about listen. Listen. Because it's the people outside of us, outside of you and me. Some of the decisions we're making, the options we're considering. It's very clear to somebody else, but we're clouded by our bias, our wants. The smart thing is not to be surrounded by people who agree with you, but to be surrounded and know people who won't. And listen. But as I said, it's never clear to us when we're in it, because we're in decision-making mode. We're not really looking at options. It can be about relationships, it can be about money, and neither one of them, relationship or money, is emotionally neutral. Our emotions get tied in, and it's really difficult. And once our appetites get involved in the decision-making process, it's like game's over. We become hyper-focused on one thing, and what is clear to those around us, we no longer see it. Wisdom says, hold on. When that's beginning to happen to you, stop. Just pause. Hesitate. And listen to something you don't want to hear. When you catch yourself saying or thinking, or you find yourself humming because you don't want to hear, you know, like a little child sings a song when you start trying to tell them what to do, so they can say, I didn't hear you, I didn't hear you. Well, we do that too, even as mature adults. If you hear yourself doing that, that's one of those amber light things in your life. It says, hey, 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 listen to yourself. You're at a point you shouldn't be, and we need to listen. Probably some of you are sitting here this morning, you're saying, wait a minute, how did you know that? That's going on in my life today. Wait a minute. Some of you accuse me of having spying on you. No, I don't have to. I live this life too. I understand it completely. Nobody told me. That's where we live. That's this life. That's the seasons of life we're in. For somebody today in this room, if you're watching or watching online, that's exactly what's going on right now. Because maybe your husband or your wife has tried to talk to you. Your fiance has tried. Your best friend has tried. Maybe you're in school and your roommate has tried to talk to you. One of the guys or the girls at work, somebody who works for you. And maybe it's really hard for them because you're the boss. And they see you taking a trail. They see you taking a trail. I mean, it's just so clearly what's happening, what's going to happen to you. And you know what? I've worked for you a long time, and I've learned to care about you. And what you're going to do is going to affect your life, your family, this company, all of our lives. And you've got to listen, but you don't listen. And we need to. Because just like you have seen in other people's lives, you see it. You see it. From the outside looking in, it's so clear. You need people from the outside looking in clearly at your life. What's really going on? You see, what happens is when we are trying to push people away from us because we don't want to hear what they have to say, it's the very time we need to pay attention. Because you know when somebody's trying to tell you that, there is this tension inside of you. It's tenseness, right? It's like, I don't really want to hear this. We're going to have this conflict, and we're tense. And the reality is you need to pay attention to that tenseness. To that thing that binds you up, it's sort of, oh, I don't want to hear this, or that dread, because that's what you need to hear. It's what we need to hear. Those are all amber lights. Our body is even telling us, you need to listen. We need to listen. Why am I resisting so hard? Why am I so angry? That's another sign. Why am I so angry? What's really going on? Why does this stir me up so? If a person who loves you wants to talk to you, to speak into your life. Why am I letting that upset me so? We go to Scripture. King David was the king. You had Saul, David. Before David died, God chose one of his sons, Solomon, to be king. When David died, Solomon was made king when he was 20 years old. 20. Now I know, or if you're a young person this morning, you think I'm picking on you, so I'll pick on me. I can tell you if I was back when I was 20, you would not want me to be king. I didn't want to be king. We still had a head full of mush. We did. And Solomon said the same thing. In fact, that's what we're going to look at. It's not the greatest age to be king, and there were younger kings, but they had good advisors. Solomon was fortunate enough, and he was smart enough, and he was wise enough, even before he was granted wisdom, to know that he didn't have what it takes to be the king of Israel at 20 years of age. And he was humble enough, and this is amazing to me too. A young man at 20 is generally not very humble. But he was humble enough to admit that he didn't know all the things he needed to know to be a king. So his biographer actually announced, or documented, wrote down a prayer that Solomon prayed. And he documented what happened in response to the prayer. And amazingly, there's so much packed in it. It's a great model for us to have this kind of posture when we need to listen to something we don't want to hear. Solomon's prayer starts, "Now, Lord, my God, you have made your servant king." What Solomon realized is that God is in control. God is in control. God chose him out of all the sons of David to be king. He wasn't voted on. David really didn't get to pick because God told him Solomon's the one. He goes on, "In place of my father, David." He used to be king in place of his father David, "but I am only a child." Now, a 20-year-old doesn't want to hear that either, nor would we say that. But Solomon was before God, the supreme being. And he says very humbly, "I'm only a child. I'm still wet behind my ears. I don't know what I'm going to do here. I don't know how to be king. I don't know," he goes on, "how to carry out my duties." And I can tell you right there's the perfect start. King Solomon had a perfect start in his prayer. It's the right posture. It's a posture that all of us need to maintain throughout our life. That God is on his throne. I am his child. I don't know everything. If you call me to a responsibility, I'm not sure I can do it. Everything doesn't go my way. How do I handle that? What we have to realize is, I only know what I know. Do you know that? You only know what you know. And none of us in here know everything. Now, if you think you do, you probably don't want to hear this, but you don't. Okay? You need to back it down a little. You don't. And he goes on, verse 9, he says, "So Lord, give your servant a discerning heart." What's a discerning heart? He's saying, look, being a king's a big deal. Today, we maybe use, Lord, be my GPS. He needs to know the direction. And my heart needs to be in connection with you. I need to know how to steer through the whole thing of being a king. I need to know how to do it right. I need to know how to be a good king, an example king. So I need you to work within my heart to be my GPS, to direct me, to guide me. That's what a discerning heart is. He's saying, I've never done this before. I've never been here before. So many times, we could say the same thing. I remember, and I said this before, when Ben was born, my firstborn, and I remember holding that newborn baby in my hands. I'd never been a father before. I am now responsible for this life. And I never felt so helpless at that perspective. And I've never been a wife before, and I've never been a husband before. And I've never ran a business before. I've never done this before. We have a lot of things we've never navigated before. Give me a discerning heart to govern your people and to distinguish between right and wrong. And who is able to govern this great people of yours? And the result of the text says that God gave Solomon wisdom, great insight, and a tremendous width, a breadth of understanding. It was measureless as the sand at the seashore. And I want to make a point because there's something about wisdom. Water always follows the path of least resistance. I don't know if you know that, you probably heard that, but water will always follow the path of least resistance. So does wisdom. See, when we say, I don't want to hear it, it's resistance. And wisdom won't come into us because we resist it. And we have to learn to lay our pride aside. I don't know everything. I haven't considered what you're saying. Pride always equals resistance in our lives. And too many times, I know, we've said, I don't want to hear that. Thanks for your opinion, but it doesn't mean much to me. The outcome of Solomon's decision, his prayer, God answering his prayer, is that his fame spread through all the known world at that time. Kings, queens, very important people would come and sit at his feet, at his throne. They would sit at his feet, kings and queens from other places, and just listen to his wisdom, his decisions. And you know what? That's pretty fascinating. And I always grew up thinking, okay, he's the wisest man on earth. And there were questions I had about that. There were questions. Some things showed you even Solomon being so wise didn't always listen to wisdom. Any man that had 300 wives and 700 concubines is not a wise person all the time. All right? I mean, that's a reality. That was not a discerning heart. So he still struggled. The wisest man that God gave wisdom and discernment to still struggled with his wants, his biases. You would almost think, and at times he didn't. He didn't listen to other people. But Solomon wrote more about seeking advice as the wisest man on earth. He wrote more about still seeking advice, and he wrote about the consequences of resisting advice more than any other ancient philosopher or writer or anyone that talked about wisdom. He wrote more of it. You see, he understood the value of outside counsel. He wrote, instruct the wise, and they will be wiser still. That's in Proverbs. A wise person is always in learning mode. They don't think I have it all. They don't think everybody has to agree with them. A wise person will hear and increase in learning, and a person of understanding will acquire or seek wise wisdom. A wise person always wants outside input. They want it. They ask for it. They look for it. They seek it out. Often a wise person doesn't wait for somebody to speak into their lives. They go ask. That keeps them from getting in that position where, when you don't want advice, that's when we need it. And that's the truth. When you and I get to a point where we say, hey, I don't want anybody else's advice. I don't want your advice. That's when we need it the most. That's when we need the outside. Somebody has a clear head looking from the outside in. That's when we hear it and need to hear it, but we don't want it. Solomon says the way of a fool is right in his own eyes. That's that kind of thinking. I want what I want, and I want it now. I got it all figured out. I don't need counsel. I got a plan. Solomon says that person's a fool. And what is a fool in the book of Proverbs? And in Jesus' teaching, a fool is someone who says that their life is only for today and tomorrow doesn't matter. A fool does not believe that life is connected. That I can do something today, and if it causes a problem tomorrow, I'll take care of it tomorrow. Not connected. Just difficult. Solomon says this, the way of a fool is right in his own eyes, but a person who listens to advice is wise. Let me ask you a question, because this tells us a little bit where you are. You don't have to, don't shout the answer out. This is for, in your mind. What do you intend to do that you don't intend to share because you don't want to hear about it? You know what I'm talking about? What do you plan to do? What are you planning? What are you thinking? But I don't want to share it with my husband. I don't want to share it with my wife because they won't like it. They're going to tell me not to. So what are we planning to do that you don't want to share because you don't want to hear about it? That's an amber light. That's an amber light. You're making a huge mistake. Whenever we get to that point, whenever we begin to say, I'm not going to tell my wife, I'm not going to tell my husband, I'm not going to tell, and because we don't want to hear their view on what I'm going to do, it's a warning light. It's a gateway decision. You're masterminding your own regret. That's what you're doing. Right when we think that, you're masterminding your own regret. When we think this, it's like we go through step one. I have a bad idea. We don't think it's bad, but the only reason you're not telling somebody is what? You have doubts about it, right? You really do. Number two, I'm not going to share it with anybody. Number three in the steps are, I'm not going to share it because I don't want to hear anything negative about it. And that leads us to regret. Not only that, when we think that way, when we think I want to do something, but I'm not telling anybody, I'm not going to tell my wife, I'm not going to tell my husband, it tells me you're a very selfish person. You're self-centered, you're selfish. Because what you do as a husband, a wife, as a child, as an employer, affects other people's lives. And when you get in a point that you don't want to hear somebody's advice, that you're not willing to listen, it's selfish. It's self-centered. It's basically saying we're not really connected. I'm doing this, but it is connected, and I'm affected by it. Another proverb is, plans fail for lack of counsel, but with many advisors they succeed. Do you want your plans to succeed? Do you want to succeed in life? Do you want your marriage to succeed? You want your relationship with your children to succeed. Grandparents, you want a good relationship with your grandchildren and your great-grandchildren? You want to do what's right? See, so often our plans fail because we don't get the input. But if we want to be successful, it says many advisors will help you succeed. Another one of the Proverbs, listen to advice, accept discipline. Another word for that discipline comes in at correction. Listen to advice and accept correction. Our plans and our ideas, sometimes, you know what? You're not too bad here. This idea that you got's pretty good. But you need to think about this. You need to correct your course a little bit. You need to do this and get these people involved and do that. And you can have a correction of your plan. And that's a formula for success. So we shouldn't just say, no, it's the only plan. No, I want my plan to work. How can we make it work? What can we do? From this is a total bad plan, but that's not a bad plan, to, that's a good plan, but here's what we need to do. I think that this should be done, and we ought to do this, and we should consider that. It's a correction. Wise people adjust. They adjust. One of the things that you and I have, that's a big deal, and I know people, all of us struggle with it. When things don't go our way, what do we have? You know what comes up in our life? We have an ego. Did you ever let your ego get in your way? I'm asking now, confession time. You ever do that? You ever let your ego? I have. You're all so good. Didn't nobody raise their hand? I've got to do a series on lying. Don't tell me our egos don't get in the way. All the time it gets in the way. It clouds our thinking. I like to talk to people I can learn from. That's a lot of people. There's people I can learn from all over this world, all over this church, all over our community. I can learn. I can learn from a child. I can learn from the aged. Real quick, we have two leadership teams in our church. One is the business team. Business team, very responsible, tremendous group of men, women who are on that team, and they're wise with business decisions. They make the choices of what we do with your offerings and gifts, where it goes. They pay the bills. They help support the ministry, and that's their responsibility. And I'm telling you, they do a great job with it. There's a ministry team. It's a little bit bigger team, and on that team are very godly men who I respect, all of them. And I can tell you that on that ministry team, and if everybody, some people would like it to be all fairy dust and happiness, and we all just never disagree with each other. Can I tell you that's not the way it is? And I'm so glad. I'm glad because we're passionate about following God's direction. And we're passionate about certain things. And there's times that we argue. There's times that we get mad at each other. We get over it because that's what you learn to do. My wife and I have disagreements, and I love her. And there's times I don't like her, but I love her. All right? And I can tell you that goes the other way too. And that ministry team is the same way, but we'll love each other no matter what. Because even though we may not agree, we still respect each other. And when we don't, something's wrong. Something's wrong. You don't want a group of yes people around you. Bad idea. And too many bosses and stuff, sometimes that's what they set up. Just so I hear yes, that's a great decision, boss. Yes, you know those people. Boss likes, kiss up. And no, you need all kinds of people around you. You need the person that always says, I think that's a terrible idea. Why? Well, explain it to me. Go a little more than just it's a bad idea. What? Tell me. I want to know that. And that's important. And we learn from that. And there's wisdom in that. Sometimes the guys will yell, say, oh, it's so many meetings. But we have to have meetings. It's important because that's when we connect one-on-one. And we can encourage each other. We can build each other up. And we can, well, that's not such the best idea. We need to think about that a little more. No, we need to decide this needs to be acted on. Those things are important and why we have them. I know that from the business team to the ministry team, they love this church. They care about you. They care about what this church does and how we go out into the community and the things we do. I don't do it all. I don't make, you know what I am? I'm a senior pastor, I'm convinced. I'm like the hood ornament. You see me. You know, in the older cars, they always had the real fancy hood ornaments. But it's like the engine and wheels and all the stuff in, you know, that makes the car run. I'm what people first see. But you know, the hood ornament eats a lot of bugs. I also get a lot of static. But if the car isn't working right, what good's the hood ornament? There's other ones, you know, some of people, you're seeing a pastor, don't you make all the decisions? Not at all. I don't want to. Because you know what? When I drop over dead somewhere, whatever happens to me, we will go on. We will go on. It's happened before. And we survive and keep going because we share what happens here. One of the things that we have to learn, and I know I had to learn that I'm not the smartest person in the room. But the counsel of many and the wisdom of others, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it hurts, even when it at times shuts us down, having that counsel is amazing. I remember thinking, and I'd listen to certain ministers and certain leaders in business and things, and I thought, man, they are amazing, they are gifted, they are extraordinary individuals. I bet you nobody has to give them any advice. I honestly thought that. I thought you could reach a point where you just, you know what I mean? It just goes out from you. But I grew up. I got with people and I began to know some of these people on a different level. I've been to the Global Leadership Summit. I don't know how many years it is now that it goes on. And I've listened to leaders. An amazing thing that I've learned about leaders is they're constantly learning. Constantly learning. So is your pastor. I don't have it all together. I don't. You say, well, by now you should. I'm working on it. Okay? I don't have it all. But I want to surround myself, and I surround myself by people who I can listen to and learn from. Leaders don't push talented people away. Leaders don't worry about, well, this person's smarter than me. They're going to, no. They make me look good. They make me look smarter than I am. This amazing thing. I want to give you 4 statements. We'll bring this thing to a close, okay? 4 statements that are really important when you're looking at wisdom. You're looking for people to give you good advice. Number 1, you need to avoid what's called the genetic fallacy. And what do I mean by genetic fallacy? So often what you and I do is we'll look at someone, we'll see someone, and they'll say, hey, can I give you some advice? And we sort of look at their life, and we think, man, you're a failure in so many things. You know, you're a failure. Somebody might say, can I talk to you and give you some advice about marriage? You've been through divorce 4 times. You know what I'm talking about? You know how we quickly dismiss that? We think, what have you got to tell me? Hey, I got some advice on raising kids. Have you been around your kids? Right? Don't we look at it that way? We sort of judge it, and we say, what advice could you possibly give me? It is totally unwise to dismiss them. If I put it this way, so often we look and say, you're a bad person But bad people, if I use that tense, and I don't mean to, but let me explain it very simply. We often look at people and say, what could you possibly give me? But the reality of it is, bad people can give good advice because they lived it. They lived it. The guy that can hardly breathe, he has air, things of the oxygen on, and he has black lung from 70 years of smoking, can tell that person that's vaping for the first time, you know what? This is what you're headed for. You say, I don't want to hear it. No, you need to hear it, because I didn't want to hear it either. You see what I'm saying? So sometimes those that we think can't give us advice can give us the best advice. Somebody that sees a marriage falling apart because you work all the time and comes to you and say, you're here too much, your family's going to suffer, and they're dead and you don't want to hear it, and they're telling you their experience. And so often we think we're above it, but we're not. Number two, just because you have experience in one area doesn't make you an expert in every area. Don't assume that you have expertise in one area and therefore you know it in every area. It's not the case. You do not. There's a lot of very successful business people who don't know how to have a good relationship at home. Doesn't make you an expert in everything. We have to realize it. Number three, don't confuse experience with insight. Don't confuse experience with insight. I used to hear this all the time when I worked. They said, guys would say, hey man, I wasn't born yesterday. All right? This ain't my first rodeo. You ever hear that? This ain't my first rodeo. I've been around the block once or twice. You know what that means? That doesn't mean you're wise. It just sort of means you're old. Just letting you know, experience isn't always insight. And experience doesn't make you wiser unless you evaluate that experience and look at it through a lens like you're looking in on and said, you know what, if I'd have did this, this, and this, it'd have turned out different. The experience alone doesn't change us unless we evaluate it, unless we take the time to go back and look at it, and then experience is a great teacher. But only if we evaluate it. And number four, listen. Listen. And when you begin to say, I know, remember we talked about that last week? I know, hey, could you, I know, I'll get it, I'll do it. We talked about it. When you hear yourself saying that, you know what you're telling the other person? Just shut up, I got it. I know it, don't tell me again, don't tell me. But we learned last week, right? Knowing and not doing is the same as not knowing. Knowing and doing are two different things. You can know something, but if you never do it, you're not effective at all. It's when we know and do that we gain, that we're wise. And that's what Jesus said. Knowing and doing, we know when life is connected. It's important. In the book of James was Jesus' earthly brother, wrote this: be quick to listen and slow to speak. Quick to listen, slow to speak. That should be the habit of our lives. That should be what we do. You want to be wise? Not only do you get the counsel from people you know that would give you what you want to hear, but we need to have the counsel to hear what we don't want to hear. And then correct it. Alter the plan. Change the course. And I can tell you absolutely certain that tomorrow and the next day and the people that are close to us will all be thankful that you had the wisdom to listen. Would you pray with me? Our Heavenly Father, as we come to you this morning, and I think of getting into your word, I think of us doing, so many of us doing the Bible recap and reading your word. And our tendency can so often be to just rush through so we get the reading done. And I know that this is another area we just need to read to listen, to hear your love and your concerns and your direction. I pray for wisdom for each one here, for each one listening. I pray that you would open our hearts to make us wise. And listening is a major step. Help each one of us. Help each one of us learn to listen more and to speak less, is what I pray in your name. Amen.
Please stand and sing with us. I was a wretch. I remember who I was. I was lost. I was blind. I was running out of time. Sin separated. The breach was far too wide. But from the far side of the chasm, you held me in your light. So you made a way across the great divide, left behind heaven's throne to build it here inside. There at the cross, you paid the debt I owed, broke my chains.